The digital square that contained Ethan, the VP's son, the one with the trust fund and the undeserved title, suddenly dominated the all-hands video grid. His tie was too loose, his eyes were too pleased. As part of our restructuring toward a leaner, more agile future, he announced, the language corporate poison, we're outsourcing your entire function, effective immediately. We appreciate your past contributions. He didn't look at me. He didn't need to. He knew my team was the target, a cost-saving measure designed solely to clear the way for his friends and his father's legacy project. I felt the familiar, hot wave of injustice, but it broke harmlessly against the steel casing I wore. Ethan's finger moved to his screen. He hit the control. The small icon next to my name turned gray. Muted. Dismissed. You think you have the power to silence me? My lips did not move. My expression did not change. But in a deliberate, slow motion that I knew was registering on every single screen across the firm, I reached down to the corner of my desk, I picked up the heavy, circular, brass object, the official corporate signatory seal. I held it up directly into the camera lens. The silence that followed was a physical presence. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal. 6 years ago, when the founder, Mr. Sterling, had been gravely ill, I had worked the critical corporate restructuring. A favor, he'd called it. A safety net for the good people, he'd whispered from his hospital bed. Sterling trusted his VP, Ethan's father, Marcus. I knew better. I saw the quiet, calculated steps Marcus took, maneuvering his incompetent son into a position of authority, slowly stripping the company of its core values, all while Sterling recovered. I had built the company's legal structure then, brick by careful brick, and I had left one very specific, necessary failsafe. Not for me, for the soul of the company. Ethan's announcement wasn't just outsourcing my work, it was the final, arrogant move to bypass the old guard and install his circle of mediocrity. But the seal in my hand was the key to a small, obscure document, the Articles of Operational Oversight, a document I alone knew about, signed when the company faced bankruptcy, granting emergency, unilateral power to a named officer to halt any financially destabilizing, non-core operational changes. And I was the named officer. 10 minutes later, the internal messaging channels were burning. Ethan looked visibly panicked. The camera finally cut back to the main executive panel, catching the founder, Mr. Sterling, who was now leaning toward his chief counsel, his voice too loud for a whisper. Please tell me she isn't the named officer in the operational oversight articles? The counsel's face was a study in profound dread. Sir, she is. The change that bypasses her authority requires a 2/3 majority of the entire board, not just a verbal decree. Sterling's eyes, sharp even from a distance, darted to my muted, still figure. I didn't unmute. I didn't need to speak. I simply nodded once, acknowledging the founder's dawning horror. The signatory seal was back on my desk. The move had been executed. The outsourcing initiative was dead on arrival. The ensuing chaos was deafening, but I sat through it, detached. Ethan was yanked from the meeting, his small, entitled empire collapsing around him. Marcus, the VP, was furious, calling me directly. I let the phone ring. I watched the founder, Sterling, the man who had promised to protect my work, stare into the camera, realizing the snake he'd nurtured and the ruthless intelligence he had tried to dismiss. I opened a clean document and started drafting the necessary legal injunctions. Not for my job, but to enforce the operational integrity clause. My function wasn't outsourced. Ethan was. I closed my laptop with a quiet, satisfying click. I hadn't raised my voice, fired a shot, or shed a tear. I had simply activated a clause, a single sentence I had planted years ago, waiting for this specific, arrogant betrayal. I walked out, leaving the chaos to simmer. I was the silent, legal reaper of their poor choices. The control was mine now. It had always been mine.